.NET for Devices presents EvenTiles, Part 10, Periodic Agents. Hello once again, welcome to Part 10 of EvenTiles, and this time we're going to talk about periodic agents. The last time we were talking about tombstoning and the previous time as well, but this time we're going to create a background scheduled agent. It's going to run independent of our application, and eventually we're going to use that to update our EvenTiles. So what we're going to do right now is add a new project to our existing solution. That project is going to be a Windows Phone scheduled task agent instead of an application. It's going to be part of our solution. I'm just going to rename it. So instead of scheduled task agent 1, we're going to say that this is our EvenTiles scheduled task agent. I'm going to click OK, and now this is part of our solution. We just created a new class of type scheduled agent. And that scheduled agent will run periodically. As a matter of fact, it will run approximately once every 30 minutes. And in this onInvoke method, what you can do is add code that will execute in the background. So even if our application is not running at a particular moment, this code will still run each and every 30 minutes. There are some restrictions. One of the things is if you're done executing, you need to call this notify complete method, and you're only allowed to run for approximately 10 seconds in this onInvoke method. It will execute on a separate thread. Since your application might not be active, you cannot make use of UI elements of your application, so there are a number of restrictions there. In order to make use of this agent, this periodic agent, what we need to do is add a reference to it in our original project. So I'm going to add a reference to our EvenTiles scheduled agent, task agent inside our EvenTiles project. And what happened while adding that reference is that in our manifest file an entry has been added for our background service agent. So we have a scheduled task agent with the following name, EvenTiles scheduled task agent, and also the type of it. It's going to be a periodic agent, and it's a source, so the location where it can be found. So with that, our scheduled agent is part of our solution, and it can be invoked from inside our application, and that's typically what you want to do. So the user is going to be responsible for starting your periodic agent, and the user can do that, for instance, like by acting in a click event handler when the user is clicking on a button. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, communication with that scheduled agent is going to be through its name. So in order to make use of that name, what we're going to do is add a private constant string identifying our periodic agent, and we're going to call that our EvenTiles periodic task name. And we just give it a meaningful name here, so we just say, for instance, something like periodic agent. And the other thing we need to do is declare a variable, a private variable of type periodic task. Now we also need to add a using statement in order to be able to use that periodic task. So we're going to make sure that we have the phone.scheduler namespace available, and that variable we're going to call that our EvenTiles periodic task. Then I'm going to create a couple of helper methods, one to actually remove a periodic agent and one to start a periodic agent, and we're going to make use of those helper methods inside a click event handler on a button to either start a periodic agent or to remove a periodic agent. The reason that we also need functionality to remove a periodic agent is because of the fact that only one periodic agent can be available inside an application. So each application can have at most one periodic agent. It can also have a resource intensive agent, but that's something we're not going to cover here. But so there are two background processes that an application can make use of. Now first, to remove a periodic agent, what we're going to find out is whether or not currently that periodic agent is running, and we can do that by calling a static method on the scheduled action service class. I'm going to call the find method, and as I said before, periodic agents are identified by their name. So if we find an agent with the EvenTiles periodic task name, then we know that our application has a periodic agent running, and in that situation we don't get null back, and we're just gonna make sure that we are gonna remove that periodic agent by again calling a method, a static method on the scheduled action service. This time it's going to be the remove method, and we just pass the name of our periodic agent. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is start our periodic agent, and in order to do that, first we're going to verify if our periodic agent is still running, because as I said before, you can only have one agent running at a time. And this is important because also those periodic agents, they will age. In other words, if your application has not renewed its periodic agent or restarted it for 14 days in a row, then eventually that periodic agent will be removed from the scheduler. So it is very important for your application to, like each time you're starting your application, to make sure that you are renewing your periodic agent. And in order to do that, we're going to remove it and then just create a new instance of our periodic task again. And we're also going to pass it a description. That's something mandatory as well, and that description will appear to the user if they take a look at all periodic agents that are running. And then we're going to try and add our periodic agent to our scheduled action service. So we're going to call yet another static method there, and this time we're just going to pass the newly created instance of our periodic task. Now I'm making sure to surround this by a try catch block, because there might be an exception being thrown here, and that exception might be an invalid operation exception. And the reason that that exception can be thrown is that our user has the possibility on their phone to disable periodic agents for this particular application. And if periodic agents are disabled, that will result in an exception being thrown whenever we try to create a new instance of that periodic agent. Well, actually, when we are scheduling that newly created instance of that periodic agent. The error message that will be passed to us is going to be a BNS error. The action is disabled. And what we're going to do is simply inform the user that we tried to create or schedule a periodic agent, and that was not possible because the user has disabled background agents for this particular application. Okay, it looks like we are good to go with the creation of our periodic agent. So now what we need to do is make sure that the user can create or remove periodic agents. Of course, a user doesn't have any knowledge about that, so we're gonna create and remove that periodic agent on their behalf in the button install click event handler for that button that we are already using to create a secondary tile inside our application. Now, if we are going to remove that secondary tile, then we're also going to remove our periodic agent. On the other hand, if we are going to create a secondary tile, then we're going to start our periodic agent. Now notice that we do that prior to creating our secondary tile. The reason for that is that once our secondary tile is created, immediately our application goes to the background. But if something goes wrong, we want to show a message box to the user if something goes wrong with creating our periodic agent. And therefore, we first create our periodic agent, and only afterwards we create our secondary tile, because in that way we can safely pass a message to the user and they are actually able to see it. So with that, we have all functionality in place to test our periodic agents. So what we're going to do is deploy the application to the device emulator, and the first thing we're going to do is add a tile to the start screen. Now, in order to see something happening, what we want to do is set a breakpoint. So we just set that in our remove periodic agent method, because that will execute each and every time also when we want to create a periodic agent. And immediately you can see that we stopped on that breakpoint when we tried to create our secondary tile, and with that our periodic agent. And when we just continue, you notice that, hey, we didn't have a periodic agent running. We have the full application functional. If we take a look at our settings right now, and if we're going to take a look at our background tasks for our applications, what you can see is that EvenTiles now has a periodic agent installed. So that's pretty cool. That's at least some visual feedback that our operation to create that periodic agent was successful. If we want to remove it, on the other hand, you can see we stop on that breakpoint again. This time we're going to just single step. You can see that we are going to remove our periodic agent. And now if we're going to take a look again in our settings, and we're just going to go to our applications again and take a look specifically for EvenTiles in our background task, you can see that now we don't have anything running. So the indication now is that our background agent is off. We also have the possibility to disable periodic agents entirely, and I'm doing that right now. And let's see what's going to happen inside our application this time if we're going to try to install a periodic agent again. So we're going to go back to our application, we're going to add a tile, and we're going to just single step now. So first thing, we're going to try and remove a periodic agent. Well, that's not necessary since it was not there. Then we're going to create a new instance of our periodic task. We're going to try and add that to the scheduler. But hey, this time you can see that we do get an exception. The reason for that is that our user now disabled the use of periodic agents inside this particular application. So if we're going to continue running, you can see that message box appearing, and after that still our application goes to the background and we have our secondary tile installed. So that functionality is still working there. If we're going to remove our secondary agent again, well then this time there, if we are single stepping, there should not be one because we did not have one available this time because the user didn't allow us to install one. So let's restore our original situation right now. So I'm going to go to our settings, applications, background tasks, to our EvenTiles. I'm going to click on that and we're going to turn on background tasks for this application. And with doing that and returning to our application, we now should be able to actually install a periodic agent again for our application. Now one more time, those periodic agents are running once every 30 minutes, and right now we don't have any functionality inside our scheduled agent. You can see the secondary tile itself is still working properly, but one of the things that is very important right now is that the only thing we have is visual feedback that our background agent was installed, but we don't see anything happening, and since that's only running once every 30 minutes, that's kind of hard to debug. So in order to debug periodic tasks, there's another possibility available, and that will be topic of the next episode of EvenTiles. So hopefully I will see you soon for that next video.